Spider coming to you this morning from cold, rainy Melbourne, Australia with some good news. Our pull request got an approval and also has a comment. So, for those of you who haven't watched the previous videos, I suggest doing so because this is going to be the very last one in this series. So we're just going to take a look at these comments and make a couple changes. It looks like the only thing that they really wanted changed was this wording in the spec file, which we can easily change, as well as they want this constant moved to a view helper instead of being stored in the model class. So we'll do the spec one first because that's super easy. With an invalid username. So we've got that. We can, whoops. And normally you don't want to use this -a for git commits. That ends up staging and committing every file that's been edited. But in this case, I'm doing it just because this is such a small change and it's the only change we've made. I forgot to put it in the RVM gem set, I think. I'm not sure if I explained RVM at all before, but RVM is a tool that you can use to manage different Ruby versions on your computer. So other people like to use RBenv is a popular one. Cherubi is a popular one. There are a couple different ones that you can use, but what RVM does is it manages multiple versions of Ruby on your computer and multiple gem sets, so you can have dependencies installed for multiple projects that don't kind of pollute each other. So in this case, I just have to specify the gem set and the Ruby version that we're using here. So now let's see if the pre-commit hooks work. Yep. So incidentally, the way that I know that was the problem was that I saw this bundle exec rubocop. Rubocop is a gem, and so I figured that if that was failing, it was probably because it couldn't find rubocop, and that would be because I didn't specify the gem set. So that's how I solved that problem. Okay, so now that we've got that taken care of, the next step is going to be to create a helper. And I haven't used Rails helpers that much, so I'm going to Google them real fast to see what the pattern is that you use for them. I know the basics of it, but I don't know all the details about how to wire it all up. So see, that's a helper method. I want a helper module. There we go. Oh, so you can, I guess, use any helper in any view? That seems a little bit odd, but okay. Okay, so now we can use the helpers object, I guess. Okay, cool. So the first thing we're going to do, we have the app.helpers directory. And where did it go? And the first thing I want to do is create a liquid tags subdirectory in here. just for better organization. Make dir app / helpers. So now we can create a new file in here, user tag helper.rb. And then we'll look at, I guess they don't like frozen string literal in here. I can't tell if they just don't like it or if they haven't updated all their files to include it, but I will not include it since that seems to be the pattern I'm seeing. And if they want it, then they can tell me that. All right, so we'll start out with this, or it's a module. Where did I put the model? There we go. So so let's try that. Then we will go to user and get rid of this deleted user. Thing. Now, if we just go back into user tag, now we should be able to say, but this isn't a controller, so we'll see if this actually ends up working. So, go away. Let's see if I messed anything up or need to fix something about this. Yep. Couldn't find what did I oh, that's weird. It didn't look up the namespace. So what's happening here is that it's looking for liquid tags user tag helper. So they're looking for this to be namespaced in that module. So maybe what we'll do is we will get rid of that directory, because I think what might be happening is it's assuming a namespace based on the directory structure. Because otherwise what would happen, so basically what happens is if you look up a constant like user tag helper, that's a constant, the name of a module is a constant. If you look it up, the first place it looks is in the current namespace. So if you're in another module at that time, such as the liquid tags module, it will first look for the user tag helper within the liquid tags module. Then if it doesn't find it in that namespace, then it goes up to the next namespace level. So in this case, that would be the global namespace. So it should be going up and looking for just user tag helper in the global namespace, but it doesn't seem to be doing that. So that makes me think that it may be making that decision based on the directory structure instead of just loading all the files. I'm not really sure though. We'll see. So let's, yeah. Wait, what happened? Okay. Okay, this is what I thought. Just checking what the git changes were. Now, I think I have a hunch that this may get us a similar result, but we'll find out. Where did the helpers go now? Okay. Now we've got a different error. So, So that's the same error that we were getting before we had it in the before we had that constant in the user class. So the one issue that I'm having here is that we do have a debugger, which is by bug. However, Foreman, the Foreman gem is being used to run the app in the development environment, because it can run both the application server and the Sidekick processes. And the issue is that Foreman doesn't play very nice with debuggers. So it's possible that I can get it to turn off the background jobs and just run the the rest of the application code, but I'm also not sure what all these background jobs are doing. So we will Control-C out of the running server, go away, and try to restart it with bundle exec rails server. Wish me luck. So far, so good. What happens now? Same thing. So that's good. Now if we go back to user tag, let's see. So I think where I'm going to go is I'm going to go put the debugger code here so we can check the value of this @user instance variable before it calls this render to string stuff. See. So now, cool, our bybug caught it. And that looks like my user, so that's what we expected. By running exit, we can exit the debugger. Now let's try the deleted user, see what happens here. Interesting. Didn't go to the debugger. I think this might be because of the Sidekick stuff. Okay, so in other words, what's happening here is that the code isn't even getting as far as this. So let's actually stick this in the initialize method here and see if we get a different result. Yep. Ugh, I hate it when it steps through all of the gem code. Ugh, I was trying to just step through. Nope. Gotta try again. Okay, so yeah, it says that this is an undefined local variable or method helpers, and that's actually what we expected because of this not being a controller. So this helpers object is not going to be available outside of the controller. So what if we make it a constant? Because I almost like it better as a constant than as a method anyway. What if we do not that, not that. And now maybe we can take this by bug out and see what happens. There we go. It's working now. So now let me I'm gonna Google Rails view helper module constant. Just to make sure that what we've done here isn't an anti-pattern, since I haven't worked much with helpers before. All right, so I could use this include user tag helper in the user tag class, but application helper is already included, so let's actually just stick it in there. This does have a certain disadvantage in that the application helper is used in other classes that may not need it. But I see that some of the other methods, like follow button is defined in there, user colors is defined in there. So let's actually just delete this file. And then we will move to application helper. Okay. So we've got that working. Now let's see if, yep, loads properly. Deleted user renders properly. Let me go back to mine again. What's that? I bet that's a GitHub logo that isn't rendering or something. That's odd. Let me check the PR and make sure that we haven't introduced that at some point. Oh, okay, yeah, that's just the GitHub logo breaking. That isn't because of our code. Okay, cool. So, looks like this code works then. So let's run RSpec. So again, 2.7.1 is our Ruby version, and dev.2 is what I've named our gem set. Let's see, stick it under here. Was that what I was going to do? Bundle exec RSpec. Yep, so that looks good, and that looks good. Okay, so we've got some RSpec failures in here that we will need to debug before we move on with this. Let's look at our spec file for a sec while we're waiting for that to run. Those can take a while. And see. If we're using that constant or anything. Nope. So, just gotta wait for these to finish now. I don't know how many of them there are, but sometimes they can get to be a lot. I figure we'll give it another minute or two, and if they don't wrap up, then we'll run it again with fail fast, because that'll just exit as soon as there's a failing spec. Or we can see from the output what the failures are and only work on those, and then deal with others as they come up. So, let's see. This is really taking a long time. Let's give it like one more row of these green dots, or two more rows of these green dots, and then I'll Control-C out of here, and oh good, we've got a couple extra failures that are on those next rows of dots, so that will give us plenty of stuff to fix. I know when people are first getting started with test-driven development, one thing that is natural is to freak out a little bit when you get failing tests, but I like them. To me, it tells me that the test suite is doing my job and will let me know if my code breaks something. So it makes it a good safety net, knowing that stuff like this can happen. This is a lot of failures. I hope that they're all caused by the same simple thing. So I'm going to just Control-C out of this now and see what all it tells us. There's a lot of failures here. Oh dear. Okay, I know why Redis is having problems. One sec. Oh dear, Postgres and Redis are both having problems. Well, let's see. Do I troubleshoot them on my own or do I drag you into it? That's the next question. So I'll show you a little bit about how I'm debugging this. What's happening here is I'm using Homebrew on my Mac to run these services such as Postgres, that's the database, and Redis, which is a key value store that's used for Sidekick. So it looks like in this case, Postgres and Redis have both caused an error. When I cat this file, you can see it prints that file to the console, and this is going to be the log that tells us what's wrong. So so this is a little bit odd. Let's just try restarting it. See if that works. Whoops. Postgres good. Okay, cool. So now let's check on what's going on with Redis. Oops. And then that tells us where the Redis log is. Whoops. Background saving error. I don't know basically anything about Redis, so this is all kind of a Hail Mary, but brew services. If we're lucky, then this will maybe work. And then, of course, I deleted, or I closed the window where all of the RSpec failures were. So, this is a good way to run RSpec sometimes with the fail fast switch, because the fail fast switch makes it so that as soon as a test fails, it exits. So this is good for situations like ours where you don't want to wait for the entire suite to run, but you just want to figure out if any tests are failing and fix them as they come. So the specs do run in a random order. The reason for that is because if they run in the same order every time, then they can become subtly order dependent. So specs are usually randomized, just so that you don't have to, have that happen where you start getting tests failing and it turns out it's because you deleted a test that runs above them that sets something up just right. So in any case, That's why we now have to wait so long to get a failing test. And it's possible that fixing the Redis and the Postgres will actually have solved the failing tests. So we may end up having to wait a very long time for this. Maybe I'll edit this out of the final video. We'll see. If you're watching this, I decided not to edit it out. However, it's looking really good so far. It looks like, based on the fact that we haven't gotten any failures yet, it looks like many or all of those failures we saw before have been fixed by rebooting Postgres and Redis. I still don't know what was wrong with them, by the way. That was just good luck with the whole turn it off and back on again approach. Yeah, so definitely at this point it's almost certain that at least some of those specs got fixed, which would make our lives a lot simpler, because then we could just commit this and call it a day. Yeah. Still running. Now is the integration tests, I'm guessing. Integration tests are the ones that always take forever because they test everything from one end to the other. So when the dots start moving real slow, that's what I start to think. There are a couple different output formats in RSpec, and one of the things I find annoying about this one is it doesn't actually tell you any information about what specs have run and which ones have not. There's a documentation format as well that you can use where it actually prints out all the lines. Okay, so one did fail because effing Redis stopped working again. Huh, no it didn't. Interesting. Let's see. Misconf. Let me modify the data setter disabled. This looks like a message to Google. Huh, looks like I have Googled this before. Yes, it's a permission issue. I understand why this is. So the problem that's happening here that we are encountering is an issue with user accounts on my machine. I have two different ones, one for work and one for this, and they have to share a certain set of resources, including Postgres and Redis, which leads to some interesting permissions issues because Postgres needs to be run as the user that owns it. And so if I'm logged in as this account, but the other account owns it, then I can't use it in this account, and vice versa. So I have to do this hack where I change the ownership of everything every time. And this is how software development goes. Lame hacks like that. So let's see. The next step is to figure out where Redis lives. So Postgres is in, actually there's an easier way to do this. There we go. Where is Redis installed is maybe. Okay, so it looks like there's some in user./local/etc. And I'm going to check the permissions on them. So this ls-l lets us see all of this info about each file and directory in the directory that we ls'd. So in this case, you can see that YouTube, which is the current user, does own the Redis config. So it's not clear to me what the problem could be. May modify the data set or disabled. RDP snapshotting fails. Something tells me that we don't actually need these RDP snapshots. I don't know what they are, but something tells me they just sound like a thing that probably we don't really need. So if I can't figure this out in a moment, I will probably look for a way to disable them. Okay, background saving error. We'll try that. Let's actually, whoops. Let's see. Sorry, I got a text message and now I'm distracted. Welcome to ADHD. So, yes, this user owns that. Background saving error was the next thing we were going to. Okay. ls. And then where did Redis go? There. And it's owned by us. So error. Oh, okay, so it takes a while for the error to show up in the logs. That's right. I knew it was something else. ls. So the -d option here makes sure that this directory gets listed like this instead of having the contents listed. So yes, indeed, this is a problem with the permissions on that directory. So little magic here. Oops. This is what I get for having a secure password. I mistype it every time. Cool. So let's go back to where this test was failing and figure out if it now works. Bundle exec, sorry. Please work. Looks good. Okay. So I'm gonna run RSpec again, but I'm gonna do it while we're doing something else. Now, since we didn't have very many failures, and the only failure that we did get when we ran it just now was that. I mean, we wouldn't have gotten more because we ran it with failfast, but since it took so long to get a failure and it was that, I'm gonna just commit this. They do run tests in the continuous integration pipeline before the PR can be merged, so the tests will have to pass either way. I like to run them locally before I push everything, just so I know that they're at least working in my local environment before I bother the maintainers with them, basically. But since we don't think there are problems, it may be quicker for them to just run in CI. So git add -p is pretty cool because it lets you walk through all the changes that were made and decide if you want to add them to this commit. Yes, yes, and that was it. Now we get to see if we've messed up formatting or anything. Oh, good, we didn't. Cool, so now we can go back to the PR, wherever it went, here. Refresh it. And then let's check out the files changed. It's always a good idea to read your own PRs to make sure that everything that made it in here is stuff that we want. So, yep, we moved deleted user in there. We used that. Yep, okay. Path to profile. this was the conditional that we didn't manage to get rid of. But the maintainers are okay with that, so that's all good. And then, yep, our link to ifs. Yep, cool, looks all good. So I'm gonna add a note on here to this person. Oops. All right. And we have not yet merged this PR, so I'm going to kind of play it by ear and see what happens. And if they get back to us with more changes, I'll make another video implementing those changes. And if not, then you'll know that this PR was accepted and merged. Thanks for watching, and I will either see you in the next video or in a future series.